In 2000, one NFL defense was so historically dominant that statisticians ran their numbers 3 times because they did not believe what they were seeing. One team, one season, 165 points allowed in 16 games. Every offense in the NFL had roughly a 1 in 3 chance of scoring a touchdown on any given drive. Unless they faced Baltimore, then that chance dropped to almost 0. Not occasionally, every single game, all season long. But here is what makes this story truly terrifying. The statistics are not even the most dominant part. The most dominant part is what this defense did to the human beings who tried to stop it, and what it did to the man who built it. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens were not a great football team. They were a historically great defense wearing a football team's uniform. Their offense was mediocre at best. 3 different quarterbacks in a single season. Games where they scored 10 points. Games where they scored 7. One game where they scored 3, and they still won every single time. Because on the other side of the ball stood something the NFL had genuinely never seen before and has never seen since. Not a defense, a force of nature, built by one of the most obsessive defensive minds the sport has ever produced, and led on the field by a man whose presence alone changed what offenses believed was possible. Ray Lewis. This is the complete story of the defense that did not just win a Super Bowl. It permanently changed the way NFL offenses thought about what a defense could do. Not for a season, forever. The statistics are almost impossible to believe. 165 points allowed, 16 regular season games, 10.3 points per game. The NFL average that season was over 21 points per game. Baltimore was allowing less than half of what every other team gave up. Every single week. 4 shutouts in the regular season. Then the playoffs began. Tennessee Titans, shutout. Oakland Raiders, shutout. Super Bowl, New York Giants. The Giants' offense did not score a single offensive touchdown. Not one. The only points New York scored came off a kickoff return. Over the entire postseason, 4 games, Baltimore's defense allowed just 23 points total. 23 points. 4 playoff games, 1 Super Bowl championship. These are not football statistics. Why, these are historical anomalies. Numbers that sports scientists still reference today, trying to understand how a group of human beings produced them against professional NFL offenses in the highest pressure games of the entire season. And the defense that produced them was built around one man, whose story almost ended before the season began. January 2000, Super Bowl weekend. Atlanta, Ray Lewis, already one of the most feared linebackers in the NFL, was involved in an altercation outside a nightclub that left 2 men dead. Lewis was charged with murder. The charges were later reduced and dropped after Lewis testified for the prosecution. But what followed changed everything. Sponsors dropped him. Media condemned him. NFL fans called for his suspension. He returned to Baltimore carrying weight that no football player had ever carried onto a field before. And instead of collapsing, he turned personal devastation into professional dominance. His preparation became obsessive. His film study became legendary, arriving before sunrise, leaving after midnight. He memorized not just opposing play calls, but individual offensive linemen's footwork patterns, my running back's hesitation tendencies, quarterback's eye movements under pressure. He didn't just prepare more, he prepared differently than anyone the NFL had ever seen. And he dragged every single player around him to a level they had never reached before and never reached again after he was gone. What he built that season started with one speech that players still talk about 25 years later. Ray Lewis was the soul, but what surrounded him was something equally terrifying. Chris McAllister, fast enough to shadow any receiver in the NFL. Rod Woodson, future Hall of Famer, age 35, playing the best football of his entire career. And then the defensive line. Tony Siragusa, Sam Adams, Rob Burnett, Michael McCrary, a wall of combined weight and violence that made running against Baltimore functionally impossible. Opposing running backs averaged just 2.8 yards per carry, lowest in the NFL by a significant margin. But individual talent was never what made this defense historic. It was something else entirely. They played as a single organism. When Lewis shifted pre-snap, everyone shifted. When he pointed, everyone understood. When he screamed, and he screamed constantly, 11 players moved as one. Offensive coordinators described preparing for Baltimore as uniquely demoralizing. You could scheme against one player. You could scheme against a position. You could not scheme against a defense that thought and moved as a single mind. 3 moments, 3 proof points that this defense was not just historically great, but historically different from anything before or since. Week 4, Cincinnati Bengals. Final score 37-0. The Bengals offense never crossed the 50-yard line in the second half. Bengals players described it afterward not as competitive football, but as a controlled demolition. AFC Championship. Oakland Raiders. #1 offense in the AFC. Baltimore held them to 3 points. 3. Quarterback Rich Gannon sacked 4 times, pressured on over 60% of dropbacks. Later said it was the most physically punishing game of his entire career. Super Bowl XXXV. New York Giants, Kerry Collins. 31 touchdown passes that season. A fast, dangerous offense. Baltimore treated it like a practice. Collins intercepted 4 times. Giants offense, 0 touchdowns. Ray Lewis named Super Bowl MVP, the first predominantly defensive player to win the award in the modern era. And after the final whistle, Lewis did something quiet, something nobody remembers, something that tells you everything about who he actually was. After the final whistle of Super Bowl XXXV, confetti falling, teammates celebrating, cameras everywhere, Ray Lewis sat alone in the corner of the locker room for several minutes. Nobody approached him. When a reporter finally reached him, Lewis spoke about something that had nothing to do with football. He spoke about Atlanta, about January 2000, about the 2 families who lost someone that night. He said he hoped they were watching. He said he hoped they could see that a man can fall completely, publicly, devastatingly, and still find a way to stand back up. No one in that locker room said a word because everyone understood this season was never really about football. It was about one man refusing to let the worst moment of his life become the only moment people remembered. And the 2000 Baltimore Ravens defense was historically great. The numbers prove it. The championships confirm it. But Ray Lewis made it matter. Not because of the statistics, not because of the Super Bowl ring, because of what he carried onto that field every single Sunday, and what he refused to be defined by. That is what made this defense the greatest ever built. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens finished 12-4, won Super Bowl XXXV, 34-7. Ray Lewis named Defensive Player of the Year, Super Bowl MVP. Went on to play 17 seasons, retiring as the greatest linebacker in NFL history. The defense he led that year has never been replicated. Analysts still rank it as the single greatest defensive season ever played. NFL statisticians ran their numbers 3 times that year because they did not believe what they were seeing. Neither did anyone else. Some records are made to be broken. Some are made to remind us what human beings are capable of when they have something to prove. Leave 1 word below that describes what Ray Lewis was. Just 1 word. Subscribe for more NFL stories where the game reveals something bigger than football. The next one is already waiting.